told me nothing is funny unless if it is sexual. A friend of mine once told me nothing is funny unless if it is sexual. Okay, we sound good. True story. Today's shirt I'm wearing Marble Tomb. They are an unblack metal band and they totally rock. So we have a lovely old gentleman today who is talking to us about why young people are not working. Let's get into it.
Why aren't young people working as much these days? That's a difficult question to answer. And I'm asking it about what is commonly called Generation Z. Broadly speaking, those under the age of about 24 in the UK at present. Now, of course I do know that between the age...
Gotta pause this for a second. They said the same thing about us millennials, and they also said the same thing about every single generation that is young. This is not a new thing. So, Generation Z, you happen to step up to the plate and got the butt end of every single older generation's joke. Sucks that it happens, but every single generation has done it to us when we were young and naive, and the generation before, so this is part of tradition.
Ages of 16 and 24, a great many people are in education of some sort. They might still be at school or in college or at university or even in post-university education of some sort, which still means they're not in the workforce. Whatever it is, of course, that's a valid occupation on their part and a benefit to us, we hope. But taking those people out of account, there is still very obviously a significant trend going on in the UK, where the number of young people not working is growing much faster than in any other age group. And this is deeply worrying.
I would argue that basically it's not just the UK, but it's also the United States. A number of young people are not working because A, there are no jobs, B, if there are jobs, you get treated poorly and unfairly, and C, if you leave, they just replace you. That's happened to every company I've worked for. This is not new, and now people are sick of this system, and to be honest, I don't blame them. I mean, if you were a young man or a young woman and your whole life was to be a chef, meaning that was your dream, that was your end goal, or a mechanic, or, just something very basic. Yet, they are not being paid enough to live, with housing going up, with education going up, and practically everything else going up. They're now starting to say, wait a minute, why should I work for a corrupt corporate entity that is not going to care about me, my health, my well-being? Why am I living to stay poor when I can be relaxed and comfortable and be poor, is what essentially they're saying, because so many people go into debt. I've been there before and I'm still paying off some of it, but I mean, the thing is that people are fed up with the idea of just work to pay your taxes. And this is exactly why people like Tim Waltz are basically manipulating other people and taking your and mine tax-paying dollars from the federal government and sending it overseas and sending it to other places as long as he gets his big 10 to 20% cut.
Now, I see two fundamental reasons for this, and I'm basing this upon some research by John Byrne-Murdoch in the Financial Times, but also a lot of commentary over the last few months on data produced by the Office for National Statistics. And one of the reasons why there is no doubt that there is an increase in the number of people of that age not working is because of the amount of ill health that is being recorded by people of that age, most especially if they're not in education, from which many of them have been excluded as a consequence.
Again, like I said before, the fact that corporations are not caring about the employees' well-being and health. So often these corporations forget the little guy runs the engine to your company. And you might be the big guy in the driver's seat driving the company, but so often you need to remember, well, wait a minute, it's the little guys that help keep my engine running. They all go away, whether it be missing, leaving, quitting, due to poor health, your engine's not going to run and you're not going to go anywhere. So many people are tired of making other people's dreams come true. And for one, am that now I still have to work DoorDash and all this other stuff. So it's much more easier just to do side hustles and remain happy while instead of working for say like Safeway and never being able to pay off my debt, which I have done before. I only lasted 2 months at Safeway. True story. I mean, it's a long story. Or you go into a warehouse, you get paid $18.90 per hour, $19 per hour, but yet you still cannot afford a home because affording a home nowadays is only for the top rich right now. And now more and more we're seeing the American dollar value depreciate. And I assume the same is happening in the UK right now. Anyways, this older gentleman is so nice to listen to. He's giving a fresh perspective on what so many older people are missing right now. And that fresh perspective is affordable housing has become unaffordable housing. A house that should cost $7,800 has become $400,000. So it is triple the cost of what anybody can afford today, with a failing health system partnered with a lot of other failures like education and all that stuff. Right now, the world is in a reset mode, and so many young people are actually wising up and saying, oh, wow, I just paid for this degree only to be treated like total shit in the workforce. And this is why I advocate for someone who is doing such hard work for such little pay, and it's jobs we need, be it the restaurant job, be it the firefighter, or whatever the case is. You're doing a good service to the public, and I thank you for that. And also, I do strongly believe that we need to go back to the idea of wait a minute, houses should not be an investment, but places where people live. Let's continue.
That ill health. Roughly half of the 38% of young people between the ages of 16 and 24 who aren't working. I stress that, 38% not working. Roughly half of those aren't working because they have autism or some condition related to it. Another 10% now appear to have mental health related issues.
I just wanted to say, someone who is on the autism spectrum myself, he has a point here. He has nailed it on the autism. Basically, let me put you in perspective. So many times, the majority of the public forget that someone with autism can fix these things. When it comes to someone being obsessed with high housing prices and he's saying, I got a plan to lower them, 99% of the top 1% is going to say, no, screw you, we don't want you here. And then replace them with someone who is more socially on their level. And then that person just keeps raising the prices. It's a bullshit three ring circus sideshow of, if you know what I mean. And once again, yes, like in my last movie, I'm quoting the song by Tool called Anima. And I do agree that as someone with autism, we need to stop really neglecting people with autism who could actually fix these problems. For instance, if you have an autistic person who loves nothing but solving the food crisis, you would want that person in charge of the food crisis. You would not want someone who is on your social skill level.
Others have physical disability related issues. The number who are not working because they haven't got some form of health related issue or ability related issue which denies them the opportunity to work is very low. So what we're seeing is a significant increase in the number of people with mental health conditions in particular. A decade ago, 28%.
I'm just going to argue this right now. I would say that a good portion of these people who are physically handicapped end up homeless, unfortunately, because once when their family members all pass away and whatnot, 99.9% of the time they got nothing to fall back on. And government has done a shitty job of taking care of these people, especially the homeless. Right now, homelessness stems from several different factors, but to completely isolate every single handicapped person that should not be homeless is wrong too. And they don't want to be homeless, and a majority of people probably don't want to be homeless, right? But I'm just saying, the more you keep promoting this idea of let's weaken our citizens, let's weaken the value of the American dollar while simultaneously raising prices so that way all the normies who can buy into the system can continue to buy into the system. But nowadays, as we've seen in this video, a lot of these normies are thinking the way that we autistic people are thinking. Well, wait a minute. What's the point of starting a family, if I can't afford to? Hence, afford to. And it's one of those deals where you start to think about these things like, wait a minute. I was told to college because I was told to, not because I wanted to, but because I was told to. And so often, so many of these young people are now starting to understand the reality of what we autistic people have been seeing for years.
Weren't working, and now 38% aren't working, and the rise is very largely down to mental health. What has caused so much harm to young people in this age group? Well, of course, COVID is one of the obvious explanations. COVID hit people in this group incredibly hard. They were forced to survive massive uncertainty in their lives. They failed to have the attention that they needed from teachers, from supervisors at universities, from lecturers.
I'm sorry, sir, but you need to go back further than that, and you're old enough to know this. This stuff has been going on for at least 50 years. 50 years, where people cannot afford basic needs. And this is one of those deals where I do believe that everything accelerated to higher prices starting from the 80s and the 90s. And every generation before us felt like prices were accelerating, and they were right. And I remember there was a guy I read a long time ago on YouTube on his comment. He said that his dad said that we lose our freedoms now that they're requiring us to have driver's license for our personal cars. Well, now they're starting to require us to have age verification for our personal phones and stuff like that. If we're supposed to have all these age verifications, and if we're supposed to have all these qualifications to get the most basic menial job known to man, such as flipping burgers at a fast food joint, there's an issue. And this is why so many people are saying you only needed a high school diploma or no high school diploma to do this job. Now they're expecting me to have this college major, which has nothing to do with the job at hand. I don't know about you guys, but I would say screw that shit.
They didn't see their friends and colleagues for a long time, and that had knock-on effects on their mental well-being. There's no doubt that this is true, and we're seeing the consequences all over the place. We're also perhaps more aware of issues around autism and other related issues now than we have before, and I think that's incredibly positive, because at some point in time we're going to work out just what the value of people with autism, ADHD, and all sorts of other conditions, which mean they are simply not neurotypical, are for the benefit of humankind. And let's be clear, being normal is not all that it's cracked up to be, because people...
I just want to say thank you so much to this guy who's bringing up all the neurodivergence. And I also wanted to say that basically, when you have the idea of God, the Holy Spirit, and the Son all removed from a nation, well, God removes you from his personal list of nations, if that makes sense. And we're now starting to see the effects of a secular, atheistic, self promoting society that is just not working for everyone. Everyone wanted to put a one size fits all on everyone else, but I'm here to tell you it's not going to work because of the fact that we are all uniquely different in our own ways. Now, once again, I do believe Christianity gives us a choice between choosing to believe in God and choosing not to. But at the same time, you got to understand that basically, if we're going back to what our ancestors believed, this is post Christianity, not pre Christianity, but post Christianity. This is when they decided that Jesus Christ is the only hope for us. And basically, Jesus Christ is the only one who can save the human race. Now, I know I just basically pissed off almost the entire atheist community. But then again, at the same time, you gotta look at the facts here. The facts are is that the more you move God away from government, society, and other aspects of life, the more you're gonna see prices rise. The more you're gonna see us not be blessed as a nation. The more you're gonna see people not want to work. And to be frank here, I am tired of the system and just tired of being able to, just work to get nowhere. Once again, it is my dream to own an early 90s Acura Integra DA and a lot of land with a house on it. But once again, money wise, freedom doesn't give me the options to do that. Basically, my freedom is taken away from that because of the fact that a bunch of rich fat cats control our money, and they're now starting to say that investing in housing is the best investment you can do, but cars are the worst investment you can do. And I'm here to tell you this, that what if I were to tell you that yes, you should want to make more money, but no, you should not view where people live and the things that people use, such as houses and cars, as an investment. And I do agree that my dad bought primarily in the suburbs. And when I asked him one day, why did you do that? And his answer was basically as straightforward as it was, because it's a much better investment. The I word, investment. And I do think that there comes a point in time where a lot of the younger generations are now starting to see, well, wait a minute. If I can't get a house, if I can't get a car, if I can't afford basic needs, then what's the point in working towards those basic needs? You got to give people a reason to want to work. You got to give them a reason to want to stay. And this is why so many of these young kids are saying, you know what, screw it. I don't want to work this dead end job anymore if I'm not even going to be able to afford a house, be able to have a family of my own one day. And right now, the value of the dollar is very stagnant and depreciating fast. And it's funny because you should never tell my dad this, but I once told my dad that a lot of people are now starting to say we're a third world nation, and my dad being probably likely this guy's age, he's saying basically, I completely disagree with you. We are the best First Nation in the world, and once again, he was of course referring to America. But then again, he told me I lived in different third world countries, and true story, because long story short, my grandpa was a spy, and he said America is the greatest, most best nation on earth. And so often we forget that, well, other countries are really great countries too. And that's why I told him. And he actually said, well, actually, that's a fair point. And this is why the more you start pushing ungodly things on a nation, the more you will see the value of the dollar drop.
People who are normal suffer mental ill health, being divergent can actually be highly creative. And so what we need to do is understand how to put highly creative people to use in our society.
I
And here
argue
I
that.
come to my other thing. Because I sort of know a bit about this generation. I've taught some of them. I've known a lot of them. I have offspring in that generation. I talk to others. And what I gather from so many and from the commentary is that they are pretty disenchanted with the workplace. And I don't blame them. I think they've got every reason to be disenchanted by the modern workplace because, frankly, modern employers treat them with, I'm going to be polite here, contempt. That's the best I can say. When I was looking for my first job post-university,
And again, this goes back to my point, saying that you don't want to isolate neurodivergent people because of the fact that someone who is on a more normal social setting is going to stick to the routine. They're going to keep allowing these housing prices to raise and they're going to keep allowing all this other stuff to happen. And then it just comes to a point where you tolerate it all. And now people are saying, no, this is intolerable, which is good. They're now starting to wake up and think outside the box, like people like me and so many other neurodivergents have been thinking. I'm not saying, don't ever work in your life. If you want to work, go do it. No one's stopping you. But what is stopping you and people like me is the fact that there are no jobs left, no good paying jobs left. And oftentimes it's the fault of the government politicizing this. And now I think we're at the point where I just have to say government has long overstepped its boundaries, and we need to push back on government and say, no, you shouldn't have to charge outrageous prices for all these homes, and you shouldn't have to charge triple than what is required. And right now we're in that stage where we can't even get together and talk about this anymore. It's just become the routine. And you don't want someone who's going to stick to the old routine because they're not going to get anything done for you, even though they might communicate with you appropriately.
I wrote my CV. I was unusual in those days. I actually had a typewriter. I was always pounding a keyboard and was pretty good at it. And so I went off and bashed it out. I sent it off to some firms. I got called in for an interview. One interview later, I was offered some jobs, and I had to choose between those who have made me those job offers. The whole process, actually for me, lasted not more than a few days. And that was brilliant. It doesn't work like that anymore. If you're a young person wanting a job now, it's virtually as if you've got a full-time job applying for a job. You have to, first of all, make an online application. You have to distort, contort, manipulate your CV to fit into whatever document format they require. Then you almost certainly have to go through a series of online tests of ever-increasing obscurity, each of them taking a lot of preparation time and involving a lot of stress.
Again, why go through the process of telling someone where you live? Your personal information is just out the window. They want to know you're a citizen of the country you're in, but yet when it comes to illegals working, at least here in America, they don't need any of that shit. I mean, basically, you're already loved if you're an illegal here, according to the Democrats. Now, that's changed lately, but, I mean, once again, why do I have to go through being ID'd by freaking everyone? I mean, I'm sick of it. I don't know about you, but I'm sick of it. I'm sick of the idea of, no, you don't need an ID to vote, but you need an ID for practically everything else. And I'm sick of having to pay money to being able to have a license, a registration, and proof of insurance. Now, I love driving. I'm going to drive till the day I die, but I'm just saying I'm sick of it. I mean, why should police have to know my personal information? Why should they have to know about my vehicle? Because right now, I would agree, we are in the kind of slavery that IDs you and make sure all your information is correct and make sure you dot your T's and cross your I's. You're paying taxes out the wazoo, and they keep taking more and more money from you for the most worthless piece of shit government programs. Try going to the doctor and not having to schedule 2 months out. Try going to the DMV and not waiting 16 hours before you get your license. Now, some DMVs are pretty good. No complaints there. And also, above all else, stop confusing the public as to who gets what kind of benefits. We're sick of it. And I do know for a fact that back in the day, our great great grandparents who were living in the 1930s, likely, and 1920s, and so on, never had to prove themselves with an ID. They just walked in, got a job at a factory, walked out. It's not that hard to figure out. And it's one of those deals where, yes, the Great Depression came and took away a lot, but at the same time, you didn't have to be ID'd for a job, a car, all this other stuff. It's just, I'm sick of the idea that my money has to go to an insurance company and it's required by every single fucking state in America. And it's required to basically pay a monthly fine so that way insurance companies can get rich, just so that way I can drive my car. And I also have to register it. That costs money. I also need a driver's license. That costs money. It's just so fucking ridiculous that we have to do all this stuff. And why?
Then you might have to prepare an online presentation to give to somebody in the organization. So after going through around 3 rounds of these testing and application processes, you might eventually talk to somebody, but it's almost certainly going to be online. And you will have been expected to prepare something in advance to try to impress them. If you manage to impress somebody online with the conformity of your expectation with those of the organization, and you note there, I stress, your conformity with the expectations of the organization, they might then finally, in about the 5th round of the process, invite you in to take part in an exercise day where you will be compared against 30 or 40 other candidates, after which you might get an interview. This is farcical. It's contemptuous of the young person that the employer thinks that they can take up so much of that person's time. It's contemptuous of the whole of their education, that the employer thinks everything must be distorted to the employer's needs. When at that point in time, the young person...
I just want to mention that, yeah, I agree with that. Why should 4 people have to fight for one job when there should be 4 jobs for every one person? And happened back in 2020 and onward. So I do agree that when it comes to work in general, there are so many people out there who are basically saying there's an old expression and it's very famous. Shit, I just bumped the mic again. But anyways, there's an old expression that's very famous. It's called Why the fuck buy the cow when the fucking milk is free? I mean, it's common sense here. The milk is free in the world right now when it comes to being poor. Now, a lot of you are arguing, well, how can I pay my rent, all this other stuff? Well, don't fucking pay for it. Don't. I mean, yeah, sure, you might get kicked out, but it's an option to basically live in your car, live in an RV. Not saying that you should do it. I'm just saying it's an option. Just like how there's so many other options out there. And it's one of those deals where people would rather go hiking in the mountains rather than working for something they're never going to own or have. And this is why so many people are fed up with all the bullshit in government and whatnot, is because of the fact that there is no support system to help jobs that men traditionally used to do to help them get on their feet and out of the house. Because 99.9% of the boomer generation and silent generation, and they said men are fine, they're doing well. Well, they lied. Nobody is fine, nobody is doing well.
Is still open, malleable, and forming themselves, and it is up to the employer to implant in due course their values and their requirements onto the candidates they think suitable, and not to expect that those candidates have already formed that awareness, knowledge, and understanding. It's also contemptible, and I mean that word, for those who don't fit into the stereotypes. Because all of this is about putting people into boxes. When I look back on my interviewing career, and I spent a lot more of my interviewing career as the interviewer rather than the interviewee, because I hired a lot of people in my time, I reckoned that on average it took me less than 5 minutes to hire somebody after they're coming through the door and sat down to have the interview process take place.
Okay, I'm just going to say this right now. Picture this. If someone were to pay you $1 to mow the lawn, and your house costs $10 to pay off completely, and someone just said, mow the lawn, and you only did it for 1 day out of the year, versus another guy comes along and he says, hey, I'll pay you $5 to mow the lawn. I'll teach you more and more about how to mow lawns, and on top of that, I'm going to schedule you 2 times per month out of the year. I'm going with the guy who pays me $5 and lets me work 2 times a month out of the year. And why? Because I know I can pay my shit off faster. This is not rocket science, but so many quote unquote experts make it out to be rocket science.
I wanted somebody within 2 or 3 minutes of them arriving. The rest of the half an hour that I was going to commit to the process was all about confirming my opinion. If I decided I didn't want somebody, and that sometimes was very quick indeed, then I went through the rigmarole of trying to pretend that the remaining half an hour was going to be useful. And how did I even vet them before they reached there? I would get a pile of CVs, I'd go through, and I'd use my judgment to shortlist. I can remember once shortlisting one person out of 100, and I said I didn't want to see it. And I can remember the agency who sent me the CVs saying, but you've got to interview a pile of people. I said, I want that person. And it turned out that I was absolutely...
Okay, big question here. Why do lazy people get rewarded? And there's actually a YouTube video on why they do. It's because they're drama free, just want to work and go home. So my advice to anyone who is working uber hard and hustling through life is to hit the reset button and do the bare minimum at work. And if your boss goes, well, wait a minute, why the fuck aren't you not picking it up? You should be looking and saying, because that guy is not picking it up. I'm just saying it's an option, you know? Not saying you have to do it, but it is an idea here.
Right, that person was absolutely brilliant for the job. until they decided to go and become a vicar. I can remember them going off and doing that. It was very frustrating because we couldn't find a way to accommodate God part-time into a part-time work role, which this person could still have done. So anyway, that didn't work out in the end, but it was 3+ years after the interview. My point is this. The recruitment process should be one in which people engage their own discretion, their own understanding, their own expectations. And young people aren't getting that respect by anybody doing that.
That person is following their dreams. So you can't really stop someone from following their dreams. You know, like I said before, if I had all the money in the world, I'd own a lot of land, open up my own shop, start a completely brand new YouTube channel on fixing old cars and restoring them and selling them for a profit. But once again, money is an issue. And this is exactly why so many people are quitting their jobs. They're not finding meaning or purpose or following their dreams. Man, what did I eat today? But anyways, I just wanted to say that basically, if you're gonna be like this, and if you're gonna be that employer who calls your employee the guy that is hard to fill, you know, maybe you should stop punishing that employee for his behavior if he's working fast and actually cares about the company versus the guy who is super lazy and doesn't give a rat's ass.
Instead, they're being pumped into a machine from the outset. And what do they feel as a consequence? They feel like they're part of a machine. They feel like they're being treated with contempt as the cogs roll around them. They don't feel as though they're a person. So why should they treat the employer with the respect that the employer isn't giving them? I don't know. I really don't know. I don't understand it. If employers want to recruit in this way, don't expect to have committed employees. And
They are being pumped into a machine from the outside, but I would argue that's not just young people. It's nobody. Nobody is getting respect. People are running the race right now for God and some not for God. Now, maybe hopefully one day they will, but you know, that's just me, my personal opinion. But my thing is that I would argue completely that all generations are sick of working. Even managers are sick of working. They're starting to see it's pointless to keep working for a job promotion I'm never going to get. Did you guys know this? But I basically had a job where I had 3 supervisors come in. The first 2, well, they were kind of more of a team of supervisors, so I count them as one. The first 2, one of them understood the hidden work culture of not disciplining anyone, but hearing the facts before arguing the case, and the other kept giving out all these IPIPs, which is basically write-ups for not even remembering like what date you wrote. Okay, so second supervisor comes in after those 2 leaves. This is where basically he comes in, you know, great guy, really easy to get along with, and really good at what he does. And basically, you know, he had his off days, but we all do. But he understood where we were coming from. And that, Cowboys word that right there is a good boss. But then guess what? He eventually leaves, and in came the worst supervisor I ever had working for that job. But then when I went back to reapply for that old job, because obviously you're not going to talk smack about your boss, and I never did. I actually found out he missed me, but he messed up the system so much to the point where basically it was starting to depress me. All the good people had left, and then I kind of saw the writing on the wall. Well, not kind of, I did. And he kept doing things like expecting perfection out of me and whatnot, but that's just one of the several reasons why people quit.
Those young people who are getting through the process and joining, there's lots of evidence that Generation Z and whoever their slightly older peers are really not now fitting easily into the world of work. And we can't say this is just down to COVID or it's just down to doing some homeworking at some point in time. No, young people don't buy the values of the system.
This all ties back to narcissism, guys. Every single rich corporate person is a narcissist. The owner of a company is a narcissist. This is all narcissism. If you're not going to respect your employees, why do they have a point or a purpose of being there? If you're not going to pay them fair wages, why do they have a point or purpose of being there? This all ties back into the idea that we are living in an economy where working one job isn't going to put food on the table for a family of 4 or 5. We're working an economy where one job, I'm lucky enough to put food on my table. So people are now starting to see this reality of, oh crap, it would be much better to go on food stamps. It would be much better to go on welfare. It would be much better to go on disability. It would be much better to do all of these other options than to just stick in my lane and work. And to be honest, I was a job hopper and I never thought, I would have a job more than a year, but I've had 2 jobs that lasted a year and a half each. And the one I told you about lasted a little longer than that. But the thing is, and the moral of the story is that people are tired of suffering for low wages and high inflation. This is why people are saying walking out the door. And basically, the the more people begin to not work full time, the more taxes are being taken away from the government, and the more taxes are being taken away from the government, the system falls. So, very wise quote from Celso Cookie or Corn. He is um, a rabbi who I read his book called "The Secrets of the Jewish Wealth Revealed." He said the problem is not the beast, but the problem is that you're feeding it, and that's what people are seeing. They're saying, why should I feed the beast into a system that doesn't benefit me? What are the benefits? What are gonna be treated as nice in our view, and how can we move towards that?
They know full well that the system is now rigged against them. However hard they work, they're not going to end up with a decent pension because they aren't available. The ones that they're being offered by their employers are frankly never going to provide for them with security. And they're not going to have the means to pay for ever buying a home. Damn it, they have enough problems paying the rent. And they're having student debt laden upon them on top of the tax bill, making their marginal tax rates, in very many cases, higher than those of generations before them, including many of the managers they're working for. This is absurd, of course.
Okay, I'm gonna stop it there, but this guy definitely does have a point here. Basically, he is saying that why are young people like you and me basically not working anymore? And the reason why is because of how pointless it is to work. It's not meaningful work anymore. There's a big difference between meaningful work and just work. Let me put it to you this way. Why would you get so desperately mistreated at a retail store that pays shit and you're expected to do 4 to 5 times the work of an office job or any other job that pays way more? You're going to go, wait a minute, the juice isn't worth the squeeze anymore. And then you're going to go on to that office job or whatever job that is much better for you and your mental health. And then after you squeeze that out, you go move on to the next position, right? Well, now we're at a point where all the oranges have been squeezed, the good ones. And all that's left are the bad ones. So the juice is not worth the squeeze. And right now, there are a lot of rotting oranges in the workforce. We're tired of it. But let's get into the comments here. Unaffordable education, unaffordable housing, collapsing healthcare, insecure, poorly paid work, and you may soon lose your human rights. I just can't imagine why so many young people have given up. Oh, and no, or a poor pension likely too. Yeah, that's basically going back into my earlier point. So if you're not getting any more juice, it's not worth the squeeze. And if you're not getting any more of that juice from the squeeze, you eventually just give up and let the tree die with its rotting fruit. In a slave economy, there is no real reward for working. Yeah, this is a slave economy, and there's no real reward for working. Why buy a house that's just above $500,000 when you know you're not going to be able to pay it off? The system's broken. I agree with that. How society treats its most vulnerable says a lot. We choose to give 18-year-olds crushing debt, unaffordable housing, dehumanizing jobs. Yeah. I mean, when you think about it, debt doesn't work on everything. It only works on some of the things. Ungainful employment. I'm 64 and I don't blame the younger generations for telling these super rich to go to hell. I mean, right now it's a silent revolution. We're tired of being tired. And right now, more and more people like myself, it's why I actually started this YouTube show. If no one's hiring, I'm going to be able to do YouTube, write music, work on my book, which hopefully will be released one day in a fan site because it's a fan novel. But nowadays, I'm starting to see the benefits of self-employment work. You get to be your own boss and whatnot. A friend the other day told me that his 20-year-old son, Super King, used to work, has made something like 40 job applications. And in most cases, has not even received the courtesy of a rejection message. He is inevitably becoming disillusioned with the whole process. I think we all are. It's not just him. We all are. 300 years of experience is required for a $15 an hour job and it's part time. That's a good one. They are depressed because they have no future in the UK. Sky high rents, along with sky high education costs and shit wages. The UK is utterly broken. Yeah. And I would argue that it's America too. Don't just single out the UK, but it's America, practically any other first world nation that is basically starting to see the system of why buy the cow when the milk is free. Unemployment is much higher than the official numbers. Yeah, that's true. Young people may not be able to the sorry due to factors like prioritizing education, limited disposable income, economic uncertainty, lack of financial literacy, or a preference for alternative investments like cryptocurrencies or gig economy opportunities. Well, the way that I see it is it's very hard to get into something new when you're young and view it like this. Back in the 1920s, the stock market was around and it was still in its developing age, and people were buying stocks, but it was only the rich that were buying stocks because it was relatively new. So you had to be rich to buy new investment opportunities. They've grown up watching their parents working themselves into an early grave. Yeah, I agree. Those were my parents. Creates an HR department and they will create a web of HR processes to justify their own existence. True. All right, one more and then we'll call it. I sent 218 CVs and got no job. I've gotten 2 years of experience and a small network, a STEM degree. There's no way forward. We're forced to sit and wait for years, and the only thing we can do now is collect social security, play video games, watch movies, eat, sleep, work out, etc. Yeah, unfortunately, that's true. I mean, with the whole working out thing, I agree it's so much more beneficial for your health. But now, I don't know about you guys, it's been very difficult for even a lot of people to do that now that they've been working two to three different jobs for one fixed income. And the people that want to work are doing this now more than ever. Anyways, that's all I have time for today. If you're new here, don't forget to like and sub. You guys are wonderful. Have a great day, week, night, wherever you are in your lives. Anyways, later.